Welcome to SC Biz News live stream power event. My name is Andy Owens. I'm the executive editor for SC Biz News. We're the publishers of the Charleston Regional Business Journal, the Columbia Regional Business Report, GSA Business Report, the Mecklenburg Times, the South Carolina and North Carolina Lawyers Weeklies, and SC Biz Magazine. This live stream event is allowing us to bring you news and information from some of the region's top business leaders in a very safe way. We could not do this, however, without our sponsors. These are businesses and companies that understand our region. They understand what it takes to get things done. So if you need a product or service, please think of them.
You know, until about 3 months ago, for my entire life, I had been under the impression that 2020 meant clarity of vision. In fact, it meant perfect vision every time I went to the eye doctor. But my experience perhaps has been a bit like yours, and 2020 has been anything but clear vision. You know, I read recently that we started the year 2020 like 1974 with an impeachment. We then quickly morphed into what looked like 1918 with a global pandemic. Not long after, we found ourselves in 1929 as the economy began to go south. And then just a few weeks ago, we found ourselves in what certainly seems to be, even today, like 1968, with a country filled with social and civil unrest. I don't know about you, but what the last few months have demonstrated to me is that there's a lot of work to do. A lot of work to do in the country, a lot of work to do in our region. And what I know is that we can't get the work done until we get back to work. And so Charleston Southern University stands with all of you as we think through how we can be one region ready. We're ready, and I know you are too. In our case, it's getting students back on campus so that we can prepare servant leaders to pursue significant lives. Join us at Charleston Southern University as we do exactly that. God bless you.
Good morning, everyone. This is Tara Kutzli. I head up the Verizon Business Group along the coast. And just to give you some insight into what it is that we do, we truly aspire to just have a one-on-one conversation with you as a business owner and understand where you are today, where it is that you want to be tomorrow. The conversations are typically varied. It could look like a conversation on how you are trying to improve the communications from your current operational staff to your field employees to help improve the customer experience. It could be that you're trying to navigate these new waters of moving to a virtual environment and engage your clients and your current teams. We'd welcome any of these discussions. Thank you guys so much for your time this morning. Thank you to the Business Journal for everything you're doing. Let's make it a great day.
Hi, I'm Ben Knight with Viking Mergers and Acquisitions. At Viking, we help business owners sell their company in a confidential and professional manner. Viking has been in business over 24 years, and we sell more upper Main Street to low mid-market firms than anyone else in the Southeast. At Viking, we sell 75% of our listings, which are 3 times the national average, and we capture 96% of asking price, helping you to reap the biggest reward for your years of hard work. If you're like many business owners who haven't thought about how or when to exit, give us a call at 843-405-8575 or on the web at vikingmergers.com.
Thank you again for our sponsors for making this event possible. What you're about to see is live. This isn't pre-recorded. This is in a studio in North Charleston. And just like our live events that will be in person under better circumstances, We like to take questions from the audience. That's what makes these events special, is we get to hear from you and you get to ask questions in an interactive way. So use the YouTube chat functionality to send your questions in to us, and our producer, Ryan Wilcox, will be displaying them for us, and we will get to as many as possible. So this event is a three-part series on reopening businesses across the Lowcountry. We wanted to start with architecture, engineering, construction, and commercial real estate because these sectors are economic bellwethers. They are the indicators for our region. We know from our reporting, from a B2B perspective, that when these sectors move, business happens. And so we pay close attention to what's happening. So we're honored today to have three individuals from this sector. We have Chappy McKay, Vice President of Trident Construction. We have Chris Fraser, Principal and Managing Director of Avison Young. And we have Steve Dudash, who's the Regional Director for Thomas & Hutton. Thank you, gentlemen, for joining me today.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you.
So I'm going to ask each of you the same question, and I'd like to start with Chappy on the end there. Can you tell us how your company has been directly affected by the coronavirus outbreak?
Sure, absolutely. You know, we were very fortunate at Trident that we were declared an essential service. So as the Corona-19 continued to grow, we continued to operate our business. We took extra precautions. We implemented social distancing in the office and on our job sites. We stepped up our on-site and office hygiene. And we instituted a program in the office where half of our administrative staff would work in the office one day, the other half they would work at their homes, and then we started swapping. So internally and externally, we did our very best to keep everybody clean, safe, socially distanced, and that was kind of our first attempt to start dealing with the COVID-19. And then operations continued on. We now are on Zoom, we're on GoToTeam, we're implementing new technologies in our business and in the field to make sure we keep everybody safe. But we've been very, very fortunate that we've continued to operate at full force.
Very good.
Thank you.
Chris, what about Avison Young?
So I guess that there's two answers to that question. There's the external impacts on our business, which obviously we see retailers and other tenants struggle. So we've had to deal with a lot of rent abatements and deferments and people that had to be shut down. So we're dealing with that on the operational side. But our company, we're a global company. We've got offices all over the world. And so we were dealing with this in the United Kingdom and other places. And so we've got a kind of a mandate. We shut everything down on March 16th. And our office in Charleston was one of the first to reopen in North America on the day after Memorial Day. And so much like Chappy, we had a 50% rule of occupancy. We're working alternate days, Mondays and Wednesdays, Tuesdays and Thursdays. We're wearing masks in the office if we're moving about anywhere in the common areas, and then keeping social distancing, hygiene habits, minimizing visitors that are coming in. We're logging folks that are showing up just to make sure that we've got the ability to contact them if we run into a problem. So it's been a change, but fortunately for us, most of our folks work remotely a lot anyway. This forced us to become more adept at doing so, and so we've learned some lessons from this that'll impact us going forward.
Steve, what about Thomas & Hutton?
Yeah, but we're fortunate is a good word. We've been fortunate as well, I think, and similar in aspects as well with the what has happened as far as the teams. You know, we broke into teams. We did a little differently, not alternating days, but alternating, several days during the week and then alternating those weeks. But I think we've grown as well. There's some good things that actually came out through it with the leadership as they stepped up. We're very proactive in trying to be safe, trying to work our business on the outside, as Chris has said too, as well. So that all came from our leadership and the aspects of that, and how we can work safely, but still maintain our culture, which is an impact. There's an impact to the culture, of course, and
Definitely.
the mentorship sort of thing. So how do we work that now too, as well? So and the impact of that going forward.
All right, very good. And I'll just open this up to anyone. Have there been any changes to your industry sector that you think will be permanent as a result of what we've been going through the past few months?
Well, I think we've seen some, like Steve was talking about, we've seen some absolutely positive things coming out of this too. You know, in the past, we would try to put together a quick meeting with the architects, the engineers, and our owners, and you know, 2 may be available this day, and 2 might be available that day, and the speed at which we could make decisions was just accepted. Now with Zoom and Teams, we just pick a time and say, can everybody make it to that Zoom call, that no one has to drive, no one has to get there. If something is lost, of course, the interpersonal relationships before and after meetings. But I think we're going to see business operate a little bit quicker. Decisions are not going to be delayed. So in our industry, that's very helpful because that allows us to keep a schedule going forward through design, permitting, and construction. So I think the use of media and social media and the need to do that has opened some doors to us in the way that we push technology down to our company and then into people's houses and their pockets and on the job site. So we've seen some positive outcomes from some of this on that.
I think some of the permanent impacts are going to be are how we think and behave as it relates to density, right? And that relates to our industry. And we represent the consultant side. You know, we've got the other sectors here as well, but we represent the consultant and supposedly the experts in all this too. So it's how we think and forecast and try to think about this comfortable density. How are people going to live and behave and try to engage and also be safe, right? Just like we're doing here, we're all separate, you know. So how are we going to do this going forward and live, right? So what are these places that are going to be? Before the pandemic, we were thinking that we're high density, walkable, dense, very dense cores, right? But there's been a shift in that, I think. And so, you know, there's a shift out of the cities into the burbs. Some of that's going to be permanent as well. So.
Yeah, and I would also add that it's a little early to make a decision on what the ultimate impacts are, because I think the pendulum obviously swung very quickly in one direction. We're going to find that the middle is somewhere back in the different way. But we've seen a number of folks making office decisions, for instance, during this period of time when they were already evaluating where their next office space might be. And they've already determined that, gosh, you know, some of our employees, in fact, can work remotely more often than they would have otherwise. And so those impacts are going to be felt. I think there's some workplace things that gets into, to Steve's point, in terms of distancing. So just because less people come in doesn't mean you need less space necessarily, because when they do come in, you got to make sure you're accommodating them. So I think there's just a lot to be learned yet, and it's a bit early to make any bold predictions, but it's going to be different than it was before.
Yeah, we think of density typically for residential, but now it's become a thought for commercial and industrial space and business. Is, you know, it is clear that a lot of commercial assets are performing differently than they were a couple of months ago, especially when you consider food and beverage and office. Chris, do you think that there is going to be, I mean, with some of these offices perhaps downsizing and some of the food and beverage companies which have closed, unfortunately, some of their locations, is there any way to repurpose some of this space for something that works now?
Sure. I mean, look, I am of the opinion that, you know, public health issue notwithstanding, we actually in some places moved our economy to where we were going to be in 5 to 7 years anyway.
Oh, interesting.
JCPenney was going to go broke anyway. We all knew it. It was just going to take 2 or 3 years for them to get there. We just ripped the Band-Aid off and did it in 90 days. If Blockbuster Video was still here when Netflix was just coming out, this would have done it for them too. Yeah. But yet there's winners on the other side. So I think the restaurateurs who have pivoted to provide a more robust takeout option as well as trying to do in-house dining in a way that the customers and consumers feel safe will be successful. I think there'll be other businesses that will emerge. Gosh, you know, last mile delivery for industrial. If you weren't comfortable shopping online before this happened, you certainly are now. So there's some things that will be winners and losers, and things will change. But that's the normal process. It usually just takes much longer, and this forced it to happen in a very short period of time.
Chappy, Steve, are you guys seeing some demand shifting based on that, on repurposing of space, or is that not coming down yet?
Steve, you want to grab that first?
Not seeing it necessarily repurposing yet. Andy, I think part of the real question, right, is what will the market be to cause or initiate that repurpose? Is it out there for what, right? We're seeing industrial staying strong, because of supply chain management sort of things, right? So that's really important to us, and we do a lot of work in that sector. So the industrial market is fairly strong no matter what. The repurposing, I think, gets to that question of being nimble. What is the market? How can we be nimble to that market, and then how can we adjust? But what is it, right? You can't just say, yeah,
we don't know yet.
We can. Certainly you can, but what is it?
Well, you know, I'd always say I'd rather be lucky than good. We were very fortunate kind of going into this. We had pivoted, which has become the new word of the last 2 months.
Yes, it has.
So we had started pivoting before and had stood up an industrial group inside of our company to specialize on industrial projects. And, you know, we were tracking what we had done the last couple years, and going into the year, we had really stepped up our game on industrial work. And that proved to be very fortunate because they are extremely busy right now. We're seeing upfit projects that we're doing inside industrial facilities. We're wrapping up a pharmaceutical distribution facility right now. JW Aluminum is expanding. We're out there. We're in Boeing. So we're still seeing, you know, great strides in the community in spite of all of this going on. So I think there's growth in the industrial sector, but then we're also getting, you know, mixed signals in other areas too. We had a major commercial office project downtown get put on hold, but yet Mitch Norville, we started 677 Meeting Street, which is going extremely well, and we just wrapped up Gateway 22 West Edge with Gateway. In fact, on Friday we ribbon cut the new Harbor Club. Right. So there's a restaurant, if you want to call it a restaurant, a private club going into operation. There's a building we're just finishing up that the city's in, MUSC is located in, private sector is in. So I think we're in a disruptive market cycle right now, and we're seeing people taking advantage, and then we're also seeing projects that are kind of wait and see. But all in all, we're very comfortable. We had predicted about a 30% reduction in business this year. I got to give Tim Kennedy, our president, credit. When things slowed down, we pulled senior management together. We tried to assess where we would be and how we would address the market. And I think we're going to beat that. We're going to have a better year than we thought we were going to have in March when we changed our projections. But we're very, very comfortable that the market continues to grow. People want to be here. The license plates from New York and Massachusetts, everyone has come down in the last 90 days. I don't think they want to go back in their, 800 people buildings in New York and Boston. So I think we're going to see some opportunities coming our way.
Yeah. So looking at our region as a whole, what are the next business opportunities? Where's the next opportunity going to come from?
Well, I will say I'm working on some stuff with the Regional Development Alliance around supply chain changes as a result of the global crisis. The United States is certainly going to require much more PPE, much more pharmaceutical stuff. All of it's going to be sourced
life science
in the country. So our manufacturers throughout the state are even saying, hey, I can't rely on one place for my stuff to make whatever I make. And so the region is actually well positioned through the port, through some of the work like Chappy's talking about on the industrial side. We've got the distribution networks, and so I think that's where the region stands to benefit from all of what you would call the destruction, but yet there's also rebuilding in there as well. So I think that's a real opportunity for us. We've got, I'm always a big fan of Trident Technical College. We've got the ability to train people to do the work for these different types of jobs that are out there. And maybe some of the folks that have been displaced because of the current crisis will find an opportunity to get re-educated and certified in a field that will be emerging as we go forward. So I think there's opportunity out there, and there's positive news for our region. And I certainly can say, because I've got some exposure into the residential market, there are a lot of folks that are moving here from other cities that are saying, you know what, I don't think I'm going to go back. I'm going to stick right here, and this will work just fine. So even when we think about the potential for office space to contract because of work from home for certain sectors, you may find that people that were working away from a corporate headquarters before and are relocating here will create a small satellite office here. Our market will end up being a beneficiary of all that, along with other southeastern markets, frankly.
Sure.
So some of the things I've seen, based, to piggyback on what Chris is saying, some of the things I've seen about the large corporations are being more efficient with a little bit fewer people and with the technology, right? So are they really going to go back to trying to be what they were before if they're making, making bank and everything else now as they are. So it relates to what you're saying and how we behave and live and those sorts of things. So the opportunity there is there for, I think, for us to learn about that again and figure out what these places are, because people are still going to want to, I think, socialize. Absolutely. Right? And want to get together and see face to face just like we are. I haven't seen them in a while. It's great to see them again. Yeah. So, things like this are going to be important. So we've got to get that figured out.
The demise of the office space is overdone. I mean, there's a lot of folks that are out there. There's office buildings are finished. That's not going to be. No, that's not true. Right. We still have to get together and see each other. We still have to work. You can't build a culture on a Zoom call.
That's right.
All right? Now, you can keep things moving, but you still have to get together and have a meeting. So while Chappy's point is absolutely right, I don't need to get on an airplane to fly to Atlanta for a 1-hour meeting. I'll probably just do a Zoom call, make it a lot more efficient, and save a lot more money. But in terms of trying to lead teams of people and organizations, you've got to be able to get together. That's so we're still going to need space to do that. And it just may look differently than it did before.
It will.
Gotcha. Yeah.
It will.
Well, we had 2 employees put their house last month on the market, and one had a contract in 4 days, the other one had a contract in 5 days.
Wow.
And both buyers are from out of market, moving down here from the Northeast. So it's happening.
It is definitely happening.
Yeah, that's quite interesting. So we have a question from the audience. Has Trident Construction and anybody else seen a change in projects downstream? Now, I know a lot of the construction projects, they don't turn on a dime, so it takes a lot of prep work and permitting and getting capital in place and site selection.
Well, fortunately at Trident, the way we deliver our work is we start at the very front end of the project with Steve and brokers, and we try to design and build a project that meets that specific need. So you're absolutely right. We'll spend anywhere from 1 year to 2 years on a project before we actually get into the ground. But what we have seen is cash preservation. We had a couple clients that have put their projects on hold just to stay on cash right now until they see what the market's doing. We did have a hotel project, and when they saw average daily rates go to 0, they decided to postpone that purchase and maintain their cash position for their other properties. But that project will come out. Surprisingly, everybody is concerned about senior living CCRCs. We're breaking ground in about 2 weeks on one downtown on the peninsula. And we've got several other retirement community projects we're looking at right now. So I think we're going to continue to use that word, pivot. I think we're going to see that service, better health care, better ways to deliver senior living health is going to be important. There'll be some redesign in the way we manage these projects and build these projects. But I think we're going to see a very nice future here in Charleston.
Yeah, we had some stuff that paused. I'll use that word to borrow from Chappy. People that had to do things because of whether it's a tax-deferred exchange or other things went through with what they had to do. A lot of folks put things on hold and said, all right, wait a minute, I'm going to kick this down the road for 6 months to make sure we don't know what it looks like on the other side. Our phone has started ringing again now that basically first part of May you could kind of feel it starting to open back up. April was sort of just a marker. We're starting to see some activity again. But I do think people are going to take more time to evaluate, particularly in the office sector. Before I go sign another long-term lease for a lot of space, they're going to take a little more time to evaluate how their workforce is going to re-engage in the building and the property. And I think that creates opportunity for all of us to think differently. That will create jobs in construction and architecture and design, and all of that's going to flow. But I think it's going to take a minute for people to sort that out. So I think there's going to be a little bit of hesitation for anything big and bold until we see how this thing settles out.
Gotcha.
Very similar. We've seen a lot of bullish action lately, right? We sort of retracted a little bit, but we were able to offset that initially with some other work, and now that bullishness is starting to come back. The phones are starting to ring. Folks are calling back and saying, "Hey, let's get going on these plans and these things that we had sort of on hold for a little while." So we're optimistic. I would say fortunate is a good word for us, and I think it's good going forward.
Well, and when you see Mercedes getting ready to do an expansion and some construction out there, and Braskem Americas announced today they're taking 500,000 square feet at the old Navy base. My goodness, when the Navy base closed, we thought that was the end of the world, and now we've got industry locating on there, and Denton Shipyard is growing. So I think there are some positive indicators in the marketplace. I don't want to be a Pollyanna. Things can change, but I think there are enough indicators that we've got a nice, strong market going forward.
Sure.
And so before all this happened, everybody was desperate for skilled workers. We just couldn't find enough. Is that changed?
I don't know about desperate, but we're still looking for great talent.
Yeah.
I think we are, anyway.
Well, and I think, but Chappy illustrated it very clearly about the number of license plates from outside of our market.
Yeah.
Recruiting to that talent may have just gotten a little easier.
Mm-hmm.
And again, we've got the opportunity to train people here.
Right.
Folks that may have been in sectors that are more heavily impacted, that don't see a path back very quickly, it's a great opportunity for them to get retrained and get into another line of work.
Yeah, I was in discussion yesterday, but I think you're also going to see maybe a shift of jobs going where the talent is versus the talent going where the jobs are.
Right.
And that might be really good for us based on what you're saying as well. So, I mean, it's a great opportunity, I think, for us to capitalize on. We need, I think, the Chamber has done a great job, CRDA as well, too, with the data, collecting the data and being able to analyze it and use it.
Right.
So the more we have of that, the better, too. So I think there's some really good opportunities there.
Well, and you can't compliment the Chamber and the technical colleges for their programs with Charleston County School District, Berkeley, and Dorchester County School Districts to try to help students go from high school into trades, and construction trades I'm most attentive to. And so I think there's a great team out there. And if you try to say, okay, here in the last 60, 90 days, what does that look like in our industry? Subcontractors have always been challenged to get enough labor. Is there a softening in the subcontractor trades right now? There really isn't. We are starting to see a little bit more interest from our subs looking at projects downstream. We're getting pricing back from subs a little bit easier now without having to call quite as hard to get pricing back. Yeah. We're not seeing a softening in the pricing. We haven't seen it go down, but we do see some interest in the subs looking at the out months at the end of the year. But we have not seen anybody saying we've got excess capacity. Maybe what they've got to now is to manage the capacity that they have.
Gotcha. So someone mentioned supply chains. Have you seen a disruption in supply chains? Have you been able to pivot, is the word of the day, to other suppliers if things did not show up to a job site on time?
We have not experienced a tremendous amount of shortage. When we really stepped into this COVID situation within the first 60, 90 days, though we were essential services, similar services up in the Northeast were not. So some of our suppliers had to close their facility. Particularly, there were some doors coming out of Pennsylvania we were not able to get, some windows we were not able to get. So we were able to redirect and plan around those a little bit better. Our project managers and superintendents just have to be a little bit more attentive, checking 2-week look-aheads, 1-month look-aheads. Our schedules are becoming more important to make sure we don't have that supply chain issue in our business. It's manageable.
Do you guys think that industrial space, and we have quite a bit of it here in the Charleston area right now that's looking to be leased, was that going to become more important as companies like yours try to move supply chains and stuff closer?
Absolutely. We think we have a lot of industrial space here, but if you go to Greenville, they laugh at you.
Yeah,
they've got almost 3 times the market. And so it's all a relative basis, right? Ours is a bit more constrained by virtue of some of the geographic features that we have that funnel it all down to one point. But having available inventory as people start to think about where they're going to put their next whatever it is important. And we've got natural things that we win with frequently, right? Port's a huge factor in terms of how we get things in and out of here. Yep. So folks that are going to bring things in and create hubs for supplies or other distribution opportunities, that's what we need to leverage those things like we have before. One of the things we're studying now, not to get too far out in front of it, is do we have enough buildings that are compatible for life science use, for instance. I know you're doing a project today, but most of our inventory isn't easily converted to that. And so we're doing a study today through CRDA to say, okay, what would it take to make sure that some of the inventory actually has the ability to pivot to a number of different uses, not just a distribution center or not just a manufacturing plant. So we're looking at ways to make ourselves a little more attractive to some of those industries so that we can take advantage of it.
Yeah, perfect. I was just going to, say, I don't think you can give enough credit to the port and the activity that they are and how proactive they are in their business models. And Jim Newsom, I think they've done a phenomenal job. So that's going to continue. And the fact that we are poised with some of this space and being able to be nimble, pivot the space, right. Those sorts of things, I think are going to be really important. So those opportunities are there. I think it'll happen.
What was really interesting in the last couple of weeks, too, we have a new client we're starting to work with a little bit, and they're an offshore company, and they're coming to the United States for the very first time. And I can't think, it's probably been 10 years since I've seen a de novo company actually come in that did not have a previous relationship here. So I think that shows the distribution chain. These people recognize they need to be domestically producing their product to sell in the United States and not rely on a supply chain that may not be there. So I would say that's probably a bellwether of more companies from around the world coming to, hopefully, this area, but also coming to the United States to bring a product that they've never had to produce in the U.S.
So, Chris, when you mention life sciences, is that a laboratory type work? Is that healthcare?
That's a great question, Andy. It can be a whole lot of things. It starts, at the very basic. I mean, what was the hardest thing to find during this crisis? Right. Outside of toilet paper, it was the personal protective gear, your mask that Steve's got there. So masks and wipes and so on and so forth. So it starts at that level and moves all the way up. Mm-hmm. The port imports already certain raw materials that are used in some pharmaceutical things and some things. Again, not to get ahead of it, we've done a study of figuring out what has the port got coming in and where's it going, and can some of it now stay here, or what do we got going out that could stay here? So it could be diagnostics, which we see obviously are going to be a big factor going forward. It could be manufacturing. It could be clean rooms. There's wet rooms. There's all sorts of things that you can do. So coming up with a building that has the ability to be all of those things at any given time is a function of cost, obviously, but making sure that we have the ability to pivot to any of those things, because all of those things are necessary, right? We needed masks. We needed somebody to be able to provide tests. We need somebody able to make something that will either be therapeutic or cure something. We can operate in any of those spaces, and partnering with a medical university and some other research stuff, there's ways that we can really benefit from this.
Well, Kristen, I'll take that even just a half step forward. When all this started, compliment our folks, we got a phone call from 2 of the hospitals, and within 48 hours, we had converted 50 patient rooms into COVID rooms. And wow. The technology that we used was off-the-shelf technology, but hospitals going forward, MUSC is now looking at what they're going to do at the wellness center. That's going to be something different. Right. We are going to deliver infectious controls in hospitals and medical office buildings differently than we did in the past. And I think there are going to be some incredible design opportunities, construction opportunities, and new technologies coming into healthcare delivery, from nursing homes to even in-home health care.
Absolutely.
So this market is going to create some really great and interesting things, and we're going to be part of it.
It's interesting to note, we did a study in 2016 about life sciences, because that's an area that we've started to pay attention to and we're trying to grow. Since 2016 to 2020, pre-COVID, we had a 50% increase in the number of companies and employees in the region working in this sector. Mm-hmm. That number is only going to continue to grow because of some of the opportunities we're talking about.
So it was already an opportunity. It's just now going to become more amplified.
Well, yeah, and even there are other things that were being worked on. For instance, with the Brexit scenario that was playing out in the UK, we were already focused on trying to recruit companies in the UK to this region because of some obvious similarities in cultures and product requirements. This only will accelerate that conversation, because again, there's things that are being made there that we could use here, right, and they need to be sourced and manufactured here. So we're really, again, I think we actually are going to find ourselves pitching for things that would have taken us years to get to faster.
Well, I was getting ready to say, I mean, a healthy society is what we all want, right? So to be able, this has put the press on us to get that way, and if we're going to do anything, we should be ready for the next wave of whatever it is.
That's right.
Right. So all of this would help. And the beauty of it is that South Carolina as a whole, and in Charleston, in our area in particular, is because of the right to work state and everything else that goes along with that. People with the assets and everything else we have here, people want to still come here and live just like we were talking about, right? Live, in a comfortable density. So.
And I'll tell you what's been fun and exciting is watching how MUSC, and we have private sector companies in Charleston that have greatly increased the speed to market of some of these testing kits. And of course, you've seen that embraced nationally and internationally. And listen, we all want to see football this fall, and we're not going to be able to see football in a stadium until we know how we're going to monitor and measure people to create a safe environment. So I think we're just going to see, and not just this COVID-19, there's going to be a COVID-20 and a COVID-25, and COVID's been around since God created the earth. And there's going to be the next infectious disease, and the way that we're learning today to handle it and the way we're getting speed to market and producing these products is pretty amazing. I can't even begin to think about what we've accomplished in the last 6 months and what it's going to look like a year from now. But I do believe with what y'all are doing in positioning Charleston, we'll be a player in that industry going forward.
What about access to capital? Have you found that there is money for buying real estate, for doing engineering studies, and for building stuff?
There's more money sitting on the sideline right now than ever has been between the opportunity zones and some of the other incentives that were created. Money on the street. There are still retirement communities that are collecting donations every month from paychecks, and they're trying to get that money out there. It's really your area. Talk about what you're seeing.
Well, I would just say that the banks pivoted pretty quickly to providing PPP for small businesses throughout the community. And I mean, billions of dollars were done. You had Lynn Hutchison here the other day talking about First National Bank. All the other banks participated as well. So I will say they took their eye off the real estate ball for a while because they had to go get that done and get it out the door.
Right.
Interest rates remain low, and as long as the banks remain healthy, because this is not a financial crisis, let's remember, this is not what the last one was, right? This is a public health crisis. Banks are strong, and they're going to be in a position to lend. So to the extent that there's cash on the sidelines and people have adequate equity, there's going to be new projects. The real issue is the demand side. It's not the capability of building it. It's just making sure that we're providing product where the demand exists. And I do think that we've still got a little bit of learning to do over the summer about that, and particularly in the retail sector, because I think that's the one that we're going to have to wait and see in terms of how much that comes back and how quickly it comes back.
I would say that the government has done a pretty good job of helping us sustain ourselves, right, up until now. I mean, they've done a really good job. There's a lot of grants that are out there, and that more are coming. We in particular have somebody who helps us write those grants to help municipalities and whoever it is really that needs that wants to apply for grants. So we think there's more of that coming as well. So I think there's money out there for projects. You just got to get in the system and get it working.
All right. We have another question from our audience. Has anyone heard if the CRDA will be leveraging their Launchpad program during the COVID-19 era to encourage more businesses to relocate to the Lowcountry? We have had good success with that program.
I'm familiar with the program. It's ideal for small companies that are trying to put a little footprint down, and that's been very successful, as the person had asked the question. That's continued to be a product that's out there. I think the real focus right now is to just get down into these areas that we're most interested in, which, again, life sciences and these other sectors where we're trying to create opportunity. And let's not forget, you mentioned Daimler. Advanced manufacturing in general in the region is something we are particularly well suited to do, both from a training and an operational standpoint. And it's not just automotive and aeronautics, right? That flows into med tech devices, that flows into lots of other things. So I think, again, whether it's Launchpad or some of these other incentives, the state of South Carolina is really good at providing incentive for manufacturers. I know there's some effort right now finding ways to get them to be a little more aggressive about things that are not true manufacturing, because that's what we've always done, right? So there may be some other ways that we can create incentives for companies that are not technically in the manufacturing space that would be a way to incite, more interest.
I think it's the way that leverage what Chris is talking about into the life science sector and all that as well. So that's what's going to really elevate sort of that model right? Moving into the health focus and the life sciences and the way to improve all of that, advance it, and to get us ready for the next one.
Well, I'll change the thought on that just a little bit. We support a lot of organizations in the area, and CRDA is one of the organizations that we actively support. And when we stepped into this and we were trying to figure out what our business model was going to look like, one of our first calls was to David and the folks at the CRDA, and we had an incredible briefing about where they were, how they were working, Launchpad, and the different programs and projects that they were engaged in to keep volume and momentum going. And that was greatly reassuring and proved to be very accurate. So my hat's off to the CRDA for keeping the flag flying in all of this.
Very good. So let me pivot a little bit to you guys personally and as managers in your operations. How has your staff been doing? Because one of the things that I did not anticipate was the psychological toll that and the dent in our culture at the Business Journal. How are your people doing?
I'll take. Yeah, we've been very active and proactive in our communications, right? Trying to be very intentional with all of our communications from leadership all the way down, which makes a difference with those folks. We've been busy, which is good, right? Everybody's been busy. They've been working from home still, but we've all been busy. So that creates, interaction, at least on the teams. We did break out into those two teams, like I was telling you before. Right. So we had to sort of separate from that. Hopefully everybody is going to be moving back in this Wednesday. Next Wednesday coming up to get folks to really start coming back into the office and so we can start seeing each other as well. But it's been good.
And we've our company came out with a statement early on that said that if you can work from home and perform your job, and you choose to do so, you may do so till the end of the year. Wow. It was pretty.
That's good.
Pretty forward thinking in terms of all that. That's great. Some people have opted to do that for reasons that we don't need to get into. Whether they be compromised themselves or living with somebody who might be compromised and just don't want to bring it to the house. When we're all remote, it's pretty easy to get everybody on a Zoom call and you talk to everybody and you do that. Now that we're some remote, the intentionality in my mind actually has to go up, because it's great for us to be here to have a spontaneous conversation, but if you're not in the room, you're not part of it. And so I think it's going to be really incumbent upon leadership of our companies to say, okay, the three of us might be here, but the fourth or fifth member of the team isn't here in person, making sure you include them in that conversation, whether it's through Zoom or otherwise. Because if we're all doing one thing, it's easy. But when we're doing two different things, you have to be careful about not creating a class system of those that are in and those that are out. And I think it's going to take a little bit of adjustment.
Exactly what you mean.
But everybody has dealt with this very differently. We've got the full range in our office of how they've adapted to this. And I think we just have to be respectful of that and meet people where they are.
I agree completely with you. We've got 85 employees. We have 2 employees that are immunocompromised. They're still working from home, and we probably won't see them come back into the office for a while until there is a cure or inoculation or a shot for COVID. And, we're in construction, so we're a bit of the Wild West with some of our folks, and there are people out there right now that are just traveling on as business as usual completely. We recognize, we respect that COVID is out there. We're putting in, everything we can to create a safe environment in the office and on the job site. But we're like you, we've got the whole spectrum.
Do you guys think remote work is here to stay? It sounds like you do.
Oh, to some degree, I think it is. We were doing it anyway. I just think we advanced acceptance of it. Notice that none of us up here are particularly spring chickens. We're all accustomed to doing it the way we've done it. I think this forced leadership of companies to move forward a little bit in terms of the way they thought what was an acceptable work relationship. Right. And I think you're going to see much different policies in terms of how people allow folks to work remotely some of the time or all the time.
Yeah, I think it goes back to what I said before too about the efficiencies, the making bank and the model. How it's worked out pretty well with working remotely too, right? We're sort of seeing the advantages of being able to multitask too while you were working remotely, and those those communications there. So I think you're going to see at least partially that continuing forever. I really do.
Which actually, for our region, that might help solve some of our traffic problems.
Yeah, I was going to say, I haven't missed the commute for the past 2 months. That's for
Hey,
sure.
but we'll capitalize on something you said, Chris. This really has, from a management standpoint, really opened our mind to different lifestyles.
Absolutely.
And people have to have options. We've got a couple folks in the office whose children aren't going to be able to go to camp this summer.
Right.
So we're having to accommodate work at home. And we spend a lot of money creating opportunities for all of our employees to be able to set up offices at home between screens and pads and everything they would need to set up these offices. So we'll have that available for our staff that need to work from home to time. I don't think there'll be a hurricane again. I think when the governor calls for evacuation, we know people will be able to work from laptops anywhere.
Yeah, that's right.
And snow days are a thing of the past.
That's right.
But I do think it has truly opened our mind to be more accommodating to our employees' needs and not just say you're either in or you're out.
That's right.
Yeah.
So that risk to the culture, though, will be there. So we've got
Right.
to figure out how to.
You have to be more intentional about
That's
that as
exactly
well.
right. Yeah, exactly.
It will not be as spontaneous as it once was.
Yeah, that's right.
So we have another question from one of our audience members. Does the panel think there will be a reevaluation of public transportation initiatives that were underway pre-coronavirus, speaking of transportation?
Yeah, I would, transportation is a very long-range process, right? So,
Right.
Right. So I'm on the advocacy for the Low Country Rapid Transit, right? And that is
Right.
continuing to just along that path because that was a long path that started, a long time ago. So, but the adjustments, we talk about the adjustments to the placemaking along that. Based on this comfortable density that I'm talking about as well. So, I mean, yeah, people are talking about it and they're going to probably rethink and keep rethinking. But again, we got to be nimble. It has to be nimble. A lot of money was already in the system for projects. So those are going to hopefully keep going too. So, I mean, there's going to be an adjustment there, but I don't think it's going to happen real quick.
Yeah, and I'd also say, when we talk about public transportation in South Carolina, that is a very different conversation than some of my colleagues in the Northeast.
That's right.
Right.
So the density of ridership on rapid transit is a much different animal, and there'll be things that we can do and we'll know. We're talking 2026 here, so
Right.
we've got time to adjust in terms of making sure it's a safe environment for people to ride. My colleagues in New York have a completely different problem. People have no problem with the idea of being back in the office. Their issue is getting there.
Right.
It's getting on the subway and then riding to the 50th floor of an elevator with a whole lot of
Can't
folks.
really do 6 feet on the subway.
Kind of hard to do that. So I think our public transportation is better positioned for this sort of a thing than a more urban area would be.
Mm-hmm. The cool
We can
thing
plan
is
for what the new normal is.
That's right. We got
Right,
time.
right. Well, we have the opportunity to adapt.
We have
now,
time.
Right, we have time to adapt for the
So
transportation.
you're saying
system
because we
that
haven't
everything else.
designed public transportation, we get to do it more intentionally, I suppose.
Yeah, well, yeah.
Well, there's a new
Sure, they could-
paradigm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Everything changed. So we talked, when this all happened, we went out and talked to probably 60, 70 businesses across the state. And then Chappy, you guys were one of them. And a lot of the things we heard was, this is what I learned from the recession and this is how I used it.
Mm-hmm.
What will we learn from this that will prepare us for the next thing that we need to be aware of?
I can tell you in my business, there's nothing more important than the people we have working with us and working for us. I think we probably truly learned the value of everybody around us. And I mean, it's been amazing to see what my partners and colleagues have done to make this work.
I hate to say what he said, but as a global company, we had a lot of people in harm's way in this scenario. And I have to say, I have to credit our CEO and leadership for the way they've handled it. It's been very thoughtful, safety first, people first. Still do your jobs, but we're going to make sure we take care of the folks that are working with us. And I have to say that that's really, that's been a two-way street of building the culture even further.
Yep.
And I think as long as people are looking out for their employees and giving them the flexibility to do what they need for their families and also while still serving their clients, I think you create a winning proposition.
I was going to say the same thing. Our leadership has been amazing. You know, we were sort of in a growth mode. You know, we have offices up to Nashville and you know, we've got 11 offices around in the Southeast, and we have data. You know, our geographic information system goes all across the country. So we've been trying to grow. We're actually moving into Oklahoma and doing some things, maybe even in Denver. So we've been fortunate with that growth, and then this happened, and trying to be safe. And leadership, just like you talked about, being very intentional, and very high level of communication amongst all the offices on a weekly, if not daily basis, trying to make sure that everybody's connected together as we go forward. So that leadership has really made a big difference. And I think that's what you'll see going forward, right? It's sort of shifted a little bit in some of the preparation, being proactive,
right,
analyzing, you know, getting the data in front of you, being able to adjust, be nimble, pivot as quickly as possible.
All right. Well, we are coming up on 10 minutes here, so I want to get some quick hit information from you guys. Just real quickly, what are you investing in? Where do you see investments going in the next 6 to 12 months?
Technology, people, right? We're looking for good talent still. Technology, we are always trying to advance in the technology. I just talked about our GIS system that we have as well. So, you know, and how that actually translates into artificial intelligence. And how can we be intelligent as we sort of create or work towards our society, the betterment of our society going forward as a healthy society. So we're investing in, you know, that technology sort of stuff to do that.
It's more of the same. Hard to follow that. Our firm globally has invested a ton in this space, and we're actually, you know, in the United States, it's interesting. The brokerage model in the United States is a transaction-based model. That's how we get paid. But if you look at our UK counterparts, it's a consultative approach with very little transactional capabilities. And we're actually shifting our firm to become more consultative, frankly. So if you go back to some of the things we were talking about earlier in terms of the use of the office space, we can't just be brokers trying to sell an empty building to somebody because it's where we think is a neat place to go. We need to be more than that and be able to talk to them about workplace strategies, commute times, other things that influence the workplace and employee satisfaction and retention. If we become more holistic by investing in some of these things, that's where we're going to be better positioned. And so that's what we're really focused on right now.
We've been having fun, and again, it's people. You always invest in people. But I think the biggest change that we've had recently is we're having our teammates lead training exercises now, educational exercises. We still use consultants to help support from time to time, but it's been really exciting to watch our teammates step up to the plate, one, to be a leader in presenting, but also a leader in gathering information and then disseminating it to our folks. It's been fun to watch that grow.
That's right.
So if I were to give you a magic wand, let you snap your fingers and change anything about the last 2 months, or change, including our response, or change anything going forward, and we'll start with you, Chappy. What would it be? What would you change? What is your moment?
Well, you know, from the COVID side, we'd love to have, you know, the shot and have that over. But I think really, you know, in my heart, the biggest thing has really been in the last couple of weeks. And I live downtown and was in the middle of everything that's been going on and walked with the Mount Pleasant police on Sunday. If there's some way we could wave our magic wand and everybody have the ability to forgive and to receive forgiveness and grace and the way we talk through these issues, we have a lot to work on, but I think through grace, I think we can come to some beautiful answers.
Well, that's powerful. Hard to follow that too. I'd pile on to that. Crisis brings out the best and worst in folks sometimes, and I think it just, if all of us would just be willing to accept people, as I've said earlier, you got to meet people where they are, particularly during COVID. To our earlier point, I've got folks that really don't view this as a threat to them or their families, and I've got people who have lost family members to COVID, and having the ability to be compassionate and respect that, you know, people are going to have different points of view. I think the more we work at that, to your point, I think we're all going to, it'll be a better place. And so I don't know that that's a redo. I mean, if the real answer was I'd like to take a mulligan and start over for 2020, but
yeah, that would be nice.
That wasn't one of the options available to me.
No.
Magic wand, I would say, obviously, to be, prepared if it was possible for something like we had, the pandemic, certainly. And then I would say a quick answer is a healthy and equitable society would be what we, I would try to strike and try to have.
All right. Well, listen, thank you very much for your time today. I appreciate you joining us on this live stream experiment and experience. We're going to be back over the next couple of weeks with more panel discussions and some one-on-one interviews. Next week, we have Jim Newsom, the CEO and president of the South Carolina State Ports Authority, who will be joining us. And please tune in and have your questions ready. Thank you very much.